This is FBG Jen.
And FBG Kristen.
And I'm FBG Margot, host and producer. You're listening to the podcast that will help you keep a lid on the junk in the trunk and inspire you to live a happy and confident life.
Each episode, we chat with motivational experts and celebs and share our own candid adventures in being healthy.
If you're looking for a podcast that's equal parts hilarious and enlightening, well then welcome to the Fit Bottomed Girls podcast.
Want to live that fit bottom life that's free of dieting today, tomorrow, and every day of your life? Take the first step by signing up for our free 5-day Fit Bottom Reset email course at fitbottomgirls.com/email. A happier and healthier you awaits. Welcome back to the Fit Bottom Girls podcast. This is FBG Margot, and on the line today, we have FBG Jen.
Hello.
And we have FBG Kristen.
Yo.
And Jen, I think you just said low because you didn't get a lot of sleep last night.
Baby's up all night. I have so little sleep. It's ridiculous. Maybe my New Year's resolution could be for my children to sleep. Is that something I can I don't think that's something I can do, but I'd like to.
I think send it out to the universe and see what happens. That's what I say.
Night. Right. I'm like, maybe tonight is the night that they both sleep. Breakthrough. Maybe.
Well, this show we're talking about today, we interviewed Laura Gassner Otting, and her book is called Limitless. She speaks all over the country, and she's a big promoter of helping people get unstuck. And she's the founder of Limitless Possibility. And we did this interview, and then Kristen, you became kind of friends with Laura. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. It was, just kind of, I think in the interview, or maybe it was after we finished talking. I don't remember where the recording ends, but, just got to talking about some more things. And I was like, she's a rower and we have a big rowing community here. I'm like, oh, well, if you're ever in Sarasota, you should let me know and we'll get a coffee or something. And then we became friends on Facebook, and it's always really cool when we meet somebody on this podcast who is inspiring and amazing and makes you want to live up to what they appear to be, but you don't always know, are they like that all the time? And after becoming Facebook friends with her and, following along there, she does walk the walk, and she is authentic and open and honest about, the pros and the cons of, being a worldwide speaker and having that kind of a crazy travel schedule and being so determined and committed to everything that she does, from helping people to achieving her own athletic goals. And one of the kind of cool things that came of this is, so as we're recording this, it's December. So last month in November, she was doing I guess every year she does this 10,000 kettlebell challenge. And, just anybody who wants to join can join. She makes a little Facebook group, and, she just put an invite out to people. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. I had just kind of come off my Toronto half marathon and was looking for a new goal that maybe wasn't so running specific. And so I got in with this group, and it's everyone from, your typical person like me who, works from home and just kind of does some active stuff, to Olympians and stuff. And let me see how many more times I can say "and stuff" in one interview. So we did kettlebell swings and stuff. No, but it was really neat. We, there was a spreadsheet, we tracked it, everybody cheered each other on, held each other accountable. And bottom line is, I love swinging kettlebells, which I knew I liked it before, but man, it was if you just Google 10,000 kettlebell challenge, I think that it'll come up with sort of the premise of it. So you swing and then you do other exercises and do progressively more and more throughout the workout and throughout the month. And so not only did I become a badass kettlebell swinger, but my push-ups are seriously on point now. And my grip strength from swinging these heavy kettlebells around, and I kept going up in weight, my grip strength has improved. It was really neat. And plus, I got to kind of meet some other really interesting, badass people, which is always welcome.
That's awesome. So my question is it just in November, or do they have them throughout the year?
She just did it for November, but I mean, one could do this anytime, if you wanted to do it by, on your own.
Yeah, totally. That sounds
Yeah.
amazing.
And honestly, I'm gonna kind of keep doing it, not with the same, not on the same schedule as I was, because it's pretty much like 2 days on and then a day off. But boy, it was a really good, like every day was like 500 swings, and then your extra workout stuff in between. And it's a good workout and a really simple, no-brainer one that you can do if you've got kettlebells at home. You can just knock that out in your living room and be done in like 20 minutes. And I'm a huge fan of that.
Hell yeah. One of the things we talk about in this interview that I really enjoy is that she mentions two things. And I think they're very much against what we learned from Oprah. But one of them is that following your passion is actually kind of the worst advice to follow. And then secondly, she talks about the motto, fake it until you make it, is actually a very deeply flawed concept. So you guys should listen in for that, because you're going to be so inspired by this woman. Like, she really, like you said, she walks the walk, she talks the talk. So I think you guys are going to get a lot from it. And I'm really excited about this interview that you guys are going to hear. You know what else I'm excited about?
What?
Christmas trees?
Stickers. We have stickers, Fit Bottom Girl stickers, and you guys have been requesting from all over the country, all over the world, actually, you guys. I sent some to Finland recently. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, y'all are all over the world. So please, if you want a sticker and you want to stick that onto your water bottle or wherever, please send us an email. It's podcast@fitbottomgirls.com. We will ship them to you anywhere you are in the world. If you listen to us on iTunes, if you can leave us a review there, that would be amazing. Or just click the 5 stars. That totally counts. I know they make it hard to leave a review, but that would be amazing. And please be sure to subscribe. That way you'll never miss an episode. You can find us at Fit Bottom Girls on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube. Did I forget anything in the social media?
I think that's it.
I think that's it too. So guys, we're going to get right into this interview today. Take out a notebook and a pen and start to take notes, because you're going to really love this interview. It's Laura Gassner Otting of the Fit Bottom Girls. Reset your mind, body, and soul to be a little bit more fit-bottomed in our free 5-day Fit Bottom Reset email course. Sign up at fitbottomgirls.com/email now. Today we are speaking with Laura Gassner Otting. She helps people get unstuck and achieve extraordinary results. She is the founder of Limitless Possibility, and her new book is Limitless: How to Ignore Everybody, Carve Your Own Path, and Live Your Best Life. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Hello.
Hello, this is FBG Margot. On the line today, we have FBG Jen.
Hello.
And we have FBG Kristen.
Hey.
And I'm going to ask you the first question, and it's real simple. Why is follow your passion the world's worst advice? How does this hold us back from getting unstuck?
Well, I think we spent a lot of time looking at Instagram and Facebook and other social media and seeing these like beautiful flaxen-haired, flower-crowned women staring off into the distance with some meme saying, follow your passion. And we think if we just find our passion, it's all going to be great. And, little birds are going to come and dress us in the morning like Snow White, and we're going to go off to the ball like Cinderella. And it turns out that following your passion is a great idea, except it doesn't get you to your passion. So we have this sensation, this idea that if we just figure out our passion, then that's all we need to do. And that's really only the start. And so following your passion is terrible advice, because you really, you're going to get beaten up by your passion. It's going to gut you. It's going to destroy you. It might actually even empty your bank account in order for you to get to the place where your passion starts to pay off. And so I want people to find their passion and to get there. By all means, that's the holy grail. But I also want them to know that there's going to be a lot of hard work that's also involved in getting there too. And it's the decision that you actually want to do the hard yards, the work in the dark that nobody sees, to actually fulfill that passion. That's really going to tell you what's your passion and what's not.
All right. Man, I love all the imagery about the Instagram flowers and like and the Snow White. And because I do think a lot of people, see all that or hear that advice and are like, oh yeah, I just have to follow my passion, and then everything in life will be roses and it'll be great. But yeah, if you follow your passion, it's gutsy, ballsy work. For real.
It's hard stuff. When I spent 20 years interviewing thousands of leaders in major crisis moments of their career. And what I learned is that all of these people, because I was the CEO of my company, by the time they got to me, they were already qualified for the job. I just had to figure out if they were consonant with the organization, with their goals. And what I learned was that, of these thousands of people, so many of them were successful, but they weren't all happy. And I was really struck by the idea that success doesn't always equal happiness. And if success doesn't always equal happiness, well, then what the hell does? Like, how do we become happy? And so it's not this idea of just following this one myopic, lean into everything version of success. It's figuring out how we get there. And so we get stuck with this idea that passion has to be this bigger overarching thing, saving the whales or curing cancer or something that's huge, when really your passion can be getting out of debt or finishing your degree. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's working for a leader that you love. Maybe it's buying the Maserati in the beach house, or maybe it is curing cancer and saving the whales. But we have this idea that passion has to be this thing that consumes us. And if it doesn't consume us, then it's not enough. And then we think, well, somebody else has more. And we just get stuck in this trap of comparing ourselves to other people when there's always going to be somebody who is, smarter or wealthier or thinner or fitter or whatever it is. And the only success we need to judge ourselves by is our own definition of success. Is this something that makes me happy? Is this something that is my calling? Do I want to do the work that connects to this calling? And is it contributing to the kind of work that I want in a way that I can control the output and the outcome?
So I'm curious, you talked about so many different types of passions. Are there some passions out there that it's just like, no, like that is not a thing you should follow, and here's what you need to understand instead? Or is it, I didn't really phrase that very well. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is there a way to tell if you realize that, yes, I am passionate about this one thing, and I realize that just following that is not necessarily the path to success, but is there a way to sort of glean whether it's worth putting that hard work into?
So this is where the 4 C's of consonance in my book really come into play. I talk about the reason that when I learned that there were people who were successful and happy, what I noticed was that they were in alignment. They were in flow. So everything that they were doing was leading towards something that actually made them happy, as opposed to people who were one person at home and one person at work. And so I define consonance as when the what you do matches the who you are. And so for some people, it's having this calling. It's this one big overarching thing that really keeps them going and keeps them moving. It's some sort of passion. But it may be at different ages and at different stages something else. So for example, it may be that you have young kids and aging parents, and every minute you spend at work has to actually matter. You have to feel like your work matters, and that you in that box, in that organizational chart, in that company today is actually making a difference. So you have to feel deep connection that your work actually matters. It may be that what you're looking for is contribution. So the thing that you care about right now, maybe having a job that allows you to have flexibility to pick up your kids a couple days a week from school, or it allows you to travel the world, or it's building a career trajectory, or it's paying you to have the kind of lifestyle that you want, whether that's buying the Maserati or giving lots of money to philanthropy. Or it may be that you're somebody who likes to have control. You're an entrepreneur and you want to have control over the amount of money that you're making, the amount of time that you're spending working, the way that, the teams that you get assigned to, or the projects that you get put on, and how that might impact your career. So I define consonance as having these 4 C's of calling, connection, contribution, and control. And at every age and at every life stage, we may want more or less of some of them. So you don't have to have all 4 equally balanced, but for you, your rubric of consonance will look different than somebody else's. And so I think the only bad passion to follow, the only way to get stuck in this passion trap is to say, this is my passion today, and it's going to be my passion forever and ever, right? I got asked the other day, what would be the best advice you could give to your younger self on this podcast? They were listening to this podcast today, and I was saying, my younger self would say, wait, what? Advice on a podcast that's being recorded over the internet, that's being listened to on mobile phones? Like, none of those things existed. My younger self was good. So I would say, write your plans in pencil. So I think the only bad passion to follow is passion that's written in pen and you think is definitional to you and not going to change.
Let's talk about the mantra, fake it till you make it. People love to say that, but that can put limits on your growth, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if we think about times in our lives when we've been in over our heads and we're faking it till we make it, some of those times we've been in a place where, I don't know, it's somewhere that we want to be and it makes sense. And then other times we're just there because it was the right next move. It was the right next promotion. It was the right next job. It was where we were told we were supposed to go. Lean In came out, and it was this idea of you should follow the fastest, most expedient path to the corner office and the biggest paycheck. And, that might make sense for some people. It might not make sense for others. And when I found myself at the age of 22 sitting in the White House, looking around at all these like pretty young, bright things who were busy scribbling notes, and, these people would walk into the office and they'd have their dog-eared newspapers and they'd be writing all kinds of notes while they were waiting for meetings to start. And I remember thinking to myself, what are they thinking about? I'm not that smart. Like they're busy having so many ideas, and I'm just trying to, figure out how to wear my mom's hand-me-down suits in a way that I don't look ridiculous. And so I was so busy faking, trying to look like them and writing down silly, stupid notes that I wasn't even looking around to listen to the conversations and to get to know people and to create those relationships and to learn. And it turns out that if you're so busy faking it till you make it, you're not only not going to make it as quickly as you should because you're not learning things. You might also not even want to be where you are, right? If you're so busy faking it till you make it, it doesn't give you a chance to fail and to pick yourself back up and to decide whether or not you actually really want to work for this thing that you're faking so hard. And so I think fake it till you puts us in this place where we're working so hard to be somebody else's version of success that we don't even get a chance to see whether or not that's the success we want and that's the success that would feel right for us.
So let's talk a little bit. You just kind of touched on that. And I love your thoughts on, because so many of us are just afraid to fail. And we've kind of grown up thinking, like you need to get A's and you need like just all these things you're talking about what success is on the outside world without kind of taking yourself into account. So can you talk about how maybe we can better, embrace failure or be okay with failure?
Yeah, I think we tend to think about failure as a bad thing. We think failure is finale. We think it's definitional. We failed. We couldn't do it. It's over. And I tend to think about failure as fulcrum. Failure is that moment where you realize, you figure out what you're made of, and you know that you can do more. I spend a few weeks ago, I was at my kids' parent-teacher conferences, and we spent, parent-teacher conferences are like every 15 minutes you sit down with a different teacher and they tell you all the things that your kid can't do, right? they're like your kid's wonderful, except there are these 17 things that we're challenged about. And at the end of the day, I remember walking out and thinking, wow, I got some work to do. I better, focus on my family a little bit. And then I realized, what's interesting is that as adults, we get hired and paid and promoted and praised for sitting in our centers of excellence, of doing the thing that we do best in the world, right? We are the person that they went out and they recruited and they hired as the number one top person who can do this job. And we do that job every single day. Our children, on the other hand, are forced to live on the edge of their incompetence every single day. So like you figured out pre-algebra, great, here's algebra. You got algebra, great, here's geometry. You got geometry, here's trigonometry. They never rest on their laurels. They never just go back and do the same thing over and over again, week after week, year after year. They're constantly learning new things. And part of that is failure. And that's how they figure it out. So, you can either be the kind of parent who sits with their kid and does their homework with and for them, or you can let your kid flail around and bring their terrible homework back to school. And then the teacher realizes what they don't know. And when the teacher realizes what they don't know, they're able to teach them something new, and the kids are able to learn and they're able to grow. And I think as grown-ups, we were so relieved that we finally had to stop living on the edge of our incompetence, and we got really comfortable living in the center of our excellence. And I think if you look at athleticism, and I know that you talk a lot about this on your show, if you think about when you are striving to do something else, you don't just run the same race, you don't just do the same activity and hope for the same time. You're constantly pushing yourself past the edge of your incompetence to see what else you're made of. And I think if we our lives and our work as doing the same thing, I think we would all figure out that we have much elasticity and pliability and ability than we thought we had.
It's a lot with me. Wow. I I have a little sticker up on my desk right now that says it's a reminder that no is progress, rejection is progress, criticism is progress, because it means that I can improve the things that I'm good at but could always be better at. And oh gosh, that you just drove that home in a really good way. So thank you.
Well, I really love that. It's, I've heard people say that O is just yes later, but I love the idea that, all of it is progress because, everything that happens around us, even if you don't get any response whatsoever, you can still go to school on it. You can still turn the lens back and say, what can I do differently? What can I do? I ran a marathon, the first marathon of my life, about a year and a half after running the first mile of my life. And
oh my gosh.
I was always picked last for every team ever in my life. And then as I was turning 39, I ran into a friend of mine who's in her 60s. And I was like, God, Ellen, you look amazing. Either you've been really sick or there's a new man in your life. And you look way too good to have been really sick. So like, what gives? And she's like, there is a new man in my life. His name is Mike, Coach Mike. And then she proceeds to drag me to this boot camp class. I'd never belonged to a gym. I'd never been athletic. And I wasn't heavy. I wasn't thin. I was just kind of there. I'd had a couple kids. I was just like, everything was kind of starting to hurt a little. I was approaching 40. And at the end of this boot camp, he would make us run a mile around this gym. And, you'd have to run like 37 laps or something around the gym to get out to be a mile. It took me 6 weeks to get to be able to run the mile without stopping. And at the end of it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to run a 5K. And then I ran a 5K. And during that 5K, women with like fashion glasses and dads pushing double joggers were passing me on hills. I mean, it was to say I ran a 5K is like, that's stretching the truth a little bit. I completed a 5K. And a year and a half later, I finished my first marathon. But I remember as I passed mark, which, as you know, is like the furthest you run in training. So I'd never been that in my life. And it was 92 degrees that day. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, you're going to do this. You're going to be a marathoner. You're going to finish this thing. And yeah, your time sucks and this is horrible and every part of you hurts, but you're going to be a marathoner. And then another voice came crushing into my head that said, what, are you crazy? You're going to die out here. This is the dumbest thing you've ever done. This is nuts. And I remember thinking to myself, I have these two voices that are, because, I've run 20 miles in 90-degree heat at this point, so I'm completely hallucinating and having like a tea party myself in my brain. And I'm like, I remember thinking to myself, okay, you've got these two voices in your head and only one of them gets to win. Who's it going to be? And I was running. And then I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm the one who decides who gets to win. I'm the only one who gets to decide. And I could have stopped and sort of had failure in that moment. And I could have said, oh, this stinks. I was training for 4 hours and I'm running at 5 hours because it's so hot. And I could make all those decisions, or I could just say, you know what, this is the moment where I dig deep and I decide what I'm made of. And I think we all have those two voices in our head at any given time where you could say, that was a failure, that was a rejection, that was a no. Or you can say, that was an opportunity where I can learn and I can do things differently next time. And I think we all, that's the choice we get. We get that choice handed to us, sometimes unceremoniously, every single day. And if you see failure as finale, you take one path. And if you see failure as fulcrum, you take the other.
Can you please talk about your Limitless Life Assessment Quiz? Where can we find this and how can it help us?
Yes. So if you go to limitlessassessment.com, you can actually it's a quick quiz. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes. There's about 60 questions on it. And what it does is it walks the readers through each of the 4 C's of calling, connection, contribution, and control, and allows them to learn how much of each of the C's they want to have in their lives and how much of each of the C's they currently have in their lives. And then when they get the results, it gives you some tips about how to get more of whatever it is that you want. So it's a wonderful way if somebody is stuck and they're not really sure where quite to go next or sort of how to use this framework for them to sort of take it and put it into a very personalized response that they know exactly what the right next steps are.
So I'm curious, how do you personally define success for yourself, and how has that changed throughout your career and your personal life?
So when I was 21 years old, working on a presidential campaign, I had all the calling in the world. I mean, I was worth my weight in ramen soup. I was just an idealist who wanted to change the world, but I was fetching coffee. That's all I was a peon. I was a gopher. So I had no connection whatsoever. But boy, contribution, I was manifesting the values that I wanted to live in this life. And I was, certainly wasn't earning enough money to earn the kind of lifestyle that I wanted, but I was young, so I didn't really care. But I knew that if Bill Clinton won, there might have been an interesting job on the other end of it for me. And so even though I didn't have any control about where I was assigned to go and what I was assigned to do, I had all of the calling and the contribution that I so desperately and deeply wanted. And that was what my rubric looked like. Now, I'm approaching 48 years old. I've got, older parents. I've got teenage kids. I've got a husband with a really busy job. And I have a wonderful network of people where I'm involved and I can do the philanthropic and political work that I want to do to help make the world a better place, but it doesn't have to be where I spend all of my time and focus. So calling is still there, and it's pretty large, but it's not my driving factor anymore. Right now, connection has to really matter. I'm not going to go, do work for a client or serve an industry or get on a stage where I don't deeply care about what's happening and I don't feel like it's connected to sort of getting my book out there and building the platform that I want to help change people's lives. In terms of contribution, I'm able to build a career that allows me the flexibility to pick up my kids a couple days from a couple days a week from school, or travel to interesting places in the world and sit on interesting stages. And I'm able to use that platform to manifest the values that I care about in the world. And then in terms of control, I'm an entrepreneur. So I'm able to pick exactly where I want to work and how I want to work in a way that is building the life that I want. So at every age and at every life stage, the way that you will build it is different. And I think just the most important thing to do is to recognize that it's okay for it to change. In fact, it should change. And not only that, your definition is going to be different than everybody else's definition. And you're the only vote that matters. You're the only voice that matters in this.
So Laura, let's say we've got somebody who, they are just in a situation that's difficult. They've got a job and they feel quite stuck. They don't love it. But maybe due to other life circumstances, they are just not in a position where they can really make a big change there right now. What are some things that they might be able to do to just find some more purpose in a situation that doesn't seem very resplendent with it?
Well, so I think there's a couple things that people can do. In terms of finding more purpose, it really depends on how that person defines purpose. So, when we think about when we are our very best selves, so when you are your fundamentally best version of yourself, think about who you were in that moment. If you were making it rain, if you were closing a deal, maybe you were helping a loved one or a colleague through a difficult situation. So it could be loud, it could be quiet, and really thinking about who you were in that moment and thinking about how much noise you were making, what energy you were using, what muscles, what energy, what parts of your brain were engaged, and then trying to figure out how to create more of those moments in your life so that you're intentionally leaning in to that moment when you are at your very best, your fundamental state of leadership. I think that's the first thing that people can do. I think the second thing is that we have to recognize that all of us have economics of reality, and my bank doesn't take good karma in exchange for mortgage, no matter how hard I try. So while I could spend my career serving the nonprofit sector and volunteering for things, I also still need to make money, and I'm not in in a position right now where I can just do whatever I want. So I think a lot of us, whether we have classes we have to finish or a project that we're tied to for work or family issues or geography, some of us are stuck in ways that are out of our control for right now. And that's when the beauty of the side quest comes in. So the side quest is I don't know if you guys are video game players at all, but as I mentioned, teenage boys, I have a lot of video game playing in my house. The side quest is this wonderful idea where if you are playing an interactive game with a friend, but your friend can't quite log on yet, and if the goal of the interactive game is to go to the castle, slay the dragon, save the princess, but you can't go on your quest, until your friend finishes, dinner with his family and logs on. There are things that you can do. So if you need to go to the castle, slay the dragon, and save the princess, you're going to need a horse and you're going to need a sword. So what do you do right now? You go on a side quest. You tend your crops. You build your, you grow your wheat. You take your wheat, you bring it to the market, you sell the wheat, and you make some money. And with that money, you buy the horse and you buy the sword, so you can slay the dragon and save the princess. And so even if there are things that you can't do right now to have purpose, capital P purpose, there are things that you can do that can push you along the path, so that when the moment is ready and you can make the change, you have the money to, from selling the wheat, you've grown the wheat to have the money to buy the sword to slay the dragon.
So you have these teenage sons. Do you have strict rules about their social media?
I don't have. We have one strict rule in my house, which is don't be an idiot.
That's a really good rule.
I have lots of friends who have given their kids, when my kids were 12, they got cell phones, and because that's, when they go to middle school and are sort of on their own a little bit. And I have a lot of friends who gave their kids phones with like 47-page contracts, like, I get to see all of your text messages and don't ever send pictures, and on and on and on and on. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I had plenty of rules and I figured out ways to get around all of them.
Same here.
Yeah, like they're going to figure it out. And, they're relatively clever individuals. And I feel like if they want to figure out how to be naughty, they're going to figure out how to be naughty. Like I would much rather live in a world where I say, yeah, same here. I did all those things. So there's probably not much you're going to do that I haven't done. So number one, I'm 3 steps ahead of you. Number two, there's really nothing that you're going to get in trouble for that I haven't gotten in trouble for too. So why don't you talk to me and we can figure out a way out of it together? And I think that I am able to be a good mom because I have good kids. I like to think that it's my own brilliance in parenting, but I'm pretty lucky. They're pretty good. Mm-hmm. I think in parenting, you get one choice and only one choice. And I think every other choice stems from that choice. And I think the choice is either you get on their bus or you get run over by their bus. And you don't really get a choice of where the bus is going or what seat you sit in or what music is playing. Every once in a while, they might ask you for directions, but I think you're either on the bus with them or you're getting run over by it.
Wow. I have a 4-year-old, and that is so true. Like, even just getting ready in the morning, like we're either going to take all of the Paw Patrol and get them dressed as well, or we're all leaving the house crying. Like
exactly. And honestly, like, what does it really cost you to get the Paw Patrol dressed too? And here's the, I got a really good piece of parenting advice when my kids were my oldest was about 4 years old, and the advice was this: once you stop listening, they stop talking. And you have to listen to all the big stuff and all the little stuff, because the truth is it's all big stuff to them. Like, there's nothing more earnest than a 4-year-old telling you what the Paw Patrol wants to wear. And they tell you they are so earnest. They really, it's so deep in their core. And, you could dismiss it, but you're dismissing them. And when you're in a rush, it's so hard not to just be like, come on, let's go. But it ends up taking more time, don't you think?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I really couldn't agree more. So I'm curious, do you talk to your boys about all the stuff you're talking about with us today? Or does that just kind of, I don't know, like, are you having direct conversations with them about success and being stuck and, redefining your own version of success? Or is that just kind of like how your house lives?
It's hilarious. I think my kids could probably give, my kids have heard me give so much life and career advice to people over time, and they've heard me practicing, my speeches so often, and they've heard me, record these podcasts, and I think they could probably it would actually be hilarious to have one of them sit in for me on a podcast, because I actually think they would do a hilarious imitation of me. We do a thing in our house. We do a family meeting every weekend. And we've been doing it for about 2.5 years or so now, and it has fundamentally shifted the tenor of our house. So the family meeting, and I wrote a blog post about this that we can share in the show notes if any of your listeners, if your FBGs want to see it. But the idea behind the family meeting is that there are two things that made me absolutely crazy as a parent. The first are the drive-bys. When you're driving home from somewhere and your kid says something like, "Mom, I need to get a birthday present for so-and-so's party," or "I'm going to this, this party this weekend. I need new shoes." And you're like, "Oh, okay." And in your mind, you're like, "Yes, got to get the birthday present. Got to get the new shoes. Absolutely, I'm on it." And then by the time you get home, you've talked about 7 other things. You've gotten 16 texts. There's a phone call with the client, and you just forget about it. And then Saturday rolls around, your kid's like, "Where are my shoes? Where's the birthday present?" And you think, I am the worst mother ever, right? How can I not be remembered? And the truth is that it was just a drive-by and you forget about it. And they've shifted their responsibility onto you in a way that, frankly, it wouldn't allow other grown-ups to do. So like, why are you letting your kids do this? And that's the first. The second was just the fighting. Like we were just bickering and getting, we were like yelling at each other a lot. And I didn't like it. And so we set up what we call our family meeting, and we do it every weekend. And it's 45 minutes. We're in, we're out, we're done. And it starts one of the family members talks about one of our family values, whether it's trying new things or, assuming the best in others or caring about the environment or whatever. And we just mention it and saying that, we've been working on to do that. And then the next thing is an airing of gratitudes. And the airing of gratitudes is everyone kind of going around and just giving people shout outs for, achieving something big or doing something hard or there for the other one or going out of their way or just something. Then we do, just the schedule, who's where on what day and who's staying late at school and who's got to work dinner and who's who. And, we try to like kind of loosely outline dinner. And my kids are almost 15 and 17 now. So now they're like volunteering for, I'll pick up burritos on the Walmart thing. Like they're sort of doing their part. And then we do long range planning. Like we're thinking about this vacation or that vacation. Saw this show and is anybody interested? And should we get tickets? And then we do the airing of grievances. And this is where the real meeting happens. Like the whole meeting feels like it's important to everybody, but the airing of grievances is that moment when my 16-year-old will look at me and say, "Mom, on Wednesday, I was on my way to go take out the trash. And you were like, 'Why haven't you taken out the trash yet?' And I was on my way and you weren't assuming the best of me. And I feel like there might have been a better way, Mom, for you to mention that like you'd been annoyed that I hadn't taken out the trash yet. Or it's my opportunity to say, 'Hey, I picked you up from school the other day and you were super, I kind of had to go out of the way to cancel a meeting in order to be there because I knew it was an important day for you. And how can we do better next time?' And it's just this great way of striking while the iron's cold. And you can actually have a conversation about, well, what are our values as a who do we want to be when we are our best selves? And then are we living that and how do we do it? And then we, go into like when the next meeting be scheduled. And that's really the meeting. And because of that, it's kind of allowed us to use some of the framework of the ideas in the book, but not in a way where I'm like life coaching them, but really in a way where we're all kind of coming together and supporting each other and who we want to be and what we want to be in the world.
So did that structure of the meeting, did it just evolve over time, or were you really like conscious of creating it, like that framework?
So you 100% stole it from my son's camp.
Wow.
My kids go to this camp where they have this sort of broad ethos of success counseling. So if you go up to bat and you miss the ball and you're pissed off and you throw the bat down, the counselor comes over and he's like, "Hey, how'd that go?" "Well, terribly." "Well, what did you expect to happen?" "Well, I thought I would hit a home run." "Well, okay. Well, what did you do to prepare for it?" "Well, I don't know. I went up to bat and I stood there and I tried to hit the ball." "Okay. Well, what do you think you might try to do next time?" And then you sort of get to the point where the kid's saying, "Well, maybe I should try to practice a little more, and maybe that would be a good idea." And they don't, they help them think about who they are when they are their very best, and then what they could do to be that person. And in order to do that, they spend a lot of time at the camp doing tent meetings. So like you get together with your tent at the beginning of the summer, and you talk about who you want to be as a tent and what you want your community to be. And then they check in every week or so, like with each other about if they're doing that. And so the idea of doing a family meeting sort of came from the idea of doing a tent meeting. If you're running a business and you're running a division or you're managing people, you would never just assume that everybody's on the same page and everybody is doing exactly what they need to do. You set goals and then you give assignments and then you check in and you have conversations. And yet in our families, we assume that just because we're related to each other by blood or by law, we're all going to have ESP. I mean, it's sort of unfair, especially if you consider that at least half the people living in that house don't have frontal lobes. So if you're, expecting them to know how to live in the world and specifically in this community in ways that support you and you support them, but yet you're not talking to each other about what that means, then we're all operating in ignorance.
Laura, we've talked a lot about so many of the things that are included in your book, but we haven't actually talked about the fact that, you've got a book, and I would love to hear a little bit about, what was involved in bringing that to fruition, and did you have to take your own advice at any point to get unstuck?
Oh, well, it's really sort of a funny story because this book originally started off as The Non-Obvious Guide to Purpose, How to Do Work That Matters. And and the reason is because I wanted to write a book about leadership and finding your own voice and being confident in the choices that you make and the chances that you take. And I approached a publisher and he said, yeah, that sounds great. We want you to write that book and we want you to write it under our imprint, but we're doing this series called the Non-Obvious Guide series, and we would love it if you wrote a book about doing work with purpose. And I said, well, I don't really want to write that book. I already wrote that book, my first book, Mission Driven, about going from corporate to nonprofit work. And I'm sort of over, I'm past that. I don't do that anymore. And he said, yeah, but you could take those 80,000 words and just, shorten them to like 18, 20,000 words, kind of coffee with an expert feel. And then we could, do the next one. And I said, all right, fine. So I spent about a week putting together an outline. I sent it to him and he said, yeah, well, it's great. But with my publisher hat on, I really think that you could sell more books if you wrote about more than just nonprofit work as the way to find purpose. Clearly, there's other ways to find purpose than nonprofit work. And so I said, okay. So then I started expanding it. And as I was expanding it, I was really kind of going head to head with the editor because to write a book about purpose, you kind of have to figure out why you don't have it, which is sort of like an existential crisis. Like, who am I as a person and what do I care about? And a guidebook is written, chapter 1, problem solution, chapter 2, problem solution, chapter 3, problem solution. And this didn't really fit. And so we kind of started going head to head. And to her credit, because of it, the book actually became a better book. But I called the publisher up and I said, look, I think I'm stuck. This is not working. I think I'm not the author for you. And I think you should just have someone else write this book. And he said, I agree. And I was like, wait, what? I kind of expected him to talk me out of it or to let me do the book the way I wanted to. And he said, no, I actually agree. And in fact, I think this is a bigger idea than you might think it is. And I think you should write this book as just its own book, and we should publish it on its own as a big idea book in hardback. And I went, holy cats, now what am I going to do? And I called a good friend of mine and I told him the story. And he said, well, what do you want people to think? How do you want people to feel when they finish reading this book? And I said, I just don't want them to be limited anymore by everyone else's expectations and definitions of success. I just want them to be their own person and to stop listening to everybody else and to live a better life because they're living the life they want. And he said, so you want them to be limitless? And I said, yes. And so the book went from being the non-obvious guide to purpose, how to do work that matters, to limitless, how to ignore everybody, carve your own path, and live your best life. And it changed the cadence, the tenor, the tone of the entire book in a way that I was struggling. And then we talked for 45 minutes and I said, I love you dearly and I would talk to you all day long, but I can't wait to get off the phone and write this book this way now. And I think I finished the entire book in 10 days after that, because it was like he opened the floodgates of unlimiting me, right? I became limitless by just changing the definition of what this book could and should be.
That is amazing.
That's so cool.
That's awesome.
It's kind of meta, right? It's like I have a
yeah.
experience with my own book about being limitless.
And where can we find this book?
So the book is on Amazon.com. It's on Barnes and Noble. Obviously, anywhere fine books are sold. People can go to limitlessassessment.com and they can take the assessment that we talked about earlier. And I am online on all the socials everywhere at heylgo.com or heylgo on all the social media. And that's hey like hey there, HEYLGO.
Hey, Margot, can I sneak in one more question before we do last question?
Go for it.
Okay, because I know you talk times. And I feel like, how could we not ask, have a question about what it's like to work in the White House? So just anything you'd like to share that feels fun.
Well, I had some really strange experiences there. Like I met Willie Nelson standing outside the Oval Office, and my dad is a huge fan. And I went up to him and I was like, I know every word to every one of your songs. Biggest fan. Now, my dad is like a Jewish boy from Brooklyn, so that's kind of weird. And he looks at me and he goes, "That's good. That's real good." And so it's like it doesn't get any stranger than meeting Willie Nelson outside of this. But I will tell you that when your first job is briefing the president of the United States about things, you don't get that intimidated by anybody else ever. But the reason I ended up there is because I believed so deeply in this idea of community service in exchange for college tuition that I dropped out of law school and changed my entire life because it was just an idea that needed to happen. And I just got phenomenally lucky to end up in this place. I mean, it was my first real job. Like the part-time jobs I'd had before that were like making carrot beet and celery juice at a health restaurant and changing bedpans in a hospital. So it was a real career moment. But it was a great opportunity to meet the best and the brightest doing incredible things, all who were just we all had the same goal in mind, which was just making the world a better place. And I feel I feel super lucky to have been able to be there at that moment in time.
Do you still live in the DC area?
I live in Boston now.
Ah, okay. So can we ask her one more question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. So, Laura, we have one more question for you. You've been such an awesome guest. But I do have one more we have to ask you because we ask this of everybody that appears on the show. What was the last song you listened to before you did this podcast interview?
Oh, so this morning I was with my girls at the boathouse. So I'm a competitive rower, and we have a Missy Elliott playlist that we love, and so what was the name of the song that we listened to? The last song on the playlist was it was her last big single.
WTF.
Yes.
I love that.
And I joke around about that song because so I'm on this competitive rowing team, and the rowing team has women that are everywhere from 24 years old to 64 years old. It's just an incredible 40 women who are just so badass and so tough. But I do a lot of the erg workouts with some of the younger women. So there's this group of four of us, and we have a little text chain called Ergalicious because there's just the four of us, and we're figuring out when we're going to work out. And they're 25, 28, 30 years old. And so they're younger than me, and they're far fitter than me. But I'm like, yep, this is how we do it. This is how we did it when I was young. So I'm like the old lady of the group. So every time, a badass from my era comes on, I love it. But now you get Missy Elliott singing about, how things were really done back in the day. I'm all about that.
That's so awesome. Great answer.
What's one of your standard rowing workouts? I'm just curious.
Oh, well, we tend to do a lot of 4 by 20 or 25 minute pieces where we go sort of 18, 20, 22 strokes per minute with max pressure with the maybe 3 minute rest in between. But that's what we do in the beginning of the winter. And now we're moving into a little bit of speed workout time. So today was a 5 by 1500 meter workout with 5 minutes rest in between. And I will tell you, it was really good. I'm about to vomit. Really good. I wear this Whoop wristband, and if you look at my heart rate afterwards, you see spike. Oh, halfway through, not so good. Spike.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Rowing is a fascinating thing because as an entrepreneur, as somebody who is used to doing my own thing and being the leader,
right,
to just subsume your ego to the team and to the boat, but to do every single thing in exact timing as everyone else, and you can't stop or you get ejected out of the boat. I mean, it's, you'll be in the middle of the race and you're like, wow, this is fascinating. I don't know what's going to happen next. Is my heart going to explode? Am I going to die? Are we going to win? I don't really know. And then it's over. And then you look and you're like, wow, I was just at 186 heart rate for the last 4 minutes straight, and I'm 47 years old.
Wow.
Badass. It's an incredible workout. It's an incredible sport that I'm so glad that I found. But boy, it is the pain cave. It is a lot.
I've got a few friends who are competitive rowers, and they say that's one of the things they say. It's that it's harder than anything else you'll ever do, and that it's not, what do they say? It's not a casual sport. Because like you said, you have to get in, you're with your team, you've got to stick with them, and you've got to be there for them. So you can't just show up when you feel like it. And I'm curious, since you're a competitive rower in Boston, did you do Head of the Charles?
I have done Head of the Charles. Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. It is. It's great fun. It's long.
Yeah.
It's long and almost starboard. So, you're pulling the boat around because the river curves. But boy, it is a good way to get a fit bottom. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I bet.
So much. Yeah.
Oh, no joke.
Wow.
It's very good.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. You're a fantastic guest. You've given us so many truth bombs.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It.
Well, you make it so easy, so it's great.
Love this show? Tell us why in a 5-star review on iTunes, and we'll read it on the air. Also, make sure you are a subscriber. If you want to reach out to say hi or have a question about a recent episode, yay, well, feel free to email us at podcast@fitbottomgirls.com. And if this podcast jives perfectly with your brand, consider sponsoring the show. Get more info by emailing advertising@fitbottomgirls.com. Find all kinds of Fit Bottom goodness online and on social media at Fit Bottom Girls, Fit Bottom Mamas, Fit Bottom Eats, and Fit Bottom Zen. And if books and movies are your thing, check out the other podcast I co-host called Book versus Movie, which you can find anywhere where you search for podcasts. Thanks for listening.